Good morning. Well, August 19th, Tuesday. Hope your week is going well. So, we're going to jump right into the focus for today. I'm going to read you a bit out of The American Covenant in just a second. Great book that that tells the American history. I mean, the untold stories of faith that really were the root of the founding of our great nation. So, bring that to you in just a second. First, last night I had a great dinner with some men over at Bedlam Barbecue. Really appreciate Jeff Watts, the owner of Bedlam Barbecue, for having me out, and really just got to share my testimony about the journey God has had me on. So that was always exciting and a blessing to be able to share my testimony about how God has led and how He's still leading. And well, let me just share this quick verse. I didn't intend to do this morning, but I feel like I need to. It's out of 2 Corinthians 1, and just a big encouragement. It's Paul talking here, and he says, yes, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead. And this is Paul talking after he just said that he despaired even of life as he was out in Asia and all of the trouble that they encountered there. And so just encountered a lot of hard times. And he said, yeah, we had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead, who delivered us from so great a death and does deliver us, in whom we trust that He will still deliver us. And I just love that Paul refers to the one who delivered us, who does deliver us, and will deliver us. And so just take courage today that God is, He has been, He will always be the deliverer, the one who leads you out. And I don't know if that triggers anything for you, but when I think of leading out, I think of Moses leading the people out of slavery. And we serve a God of freedom, one who is always leading His people toward freedom. And it is beautiful when you think of the nature of our country. And let me just read this here. Galatians 5:1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free, and do not be entangled again with a yoke of bondage. And then you go on down to verse 13, and it says, for you, brothers, have been called to liberty. Do not use your liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. But you have been called to liberty. And then the question is, what are you going to do with that liberty? You should use your liberty to serve one another, not for your own selfish gain and ambition. So it is very encouraging when I think of God being the God of liberty, of freedom. He wants us to be free. Even in the Garden of Eden, He made an option. He could have removed the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but it was important that there was a choice and that they had the freedom to choose God or not. And we saw the consequences of when they chose not to choose Him. But He is a God of freedom. He wants us to be free. And this is the ongoing battle, is for freedom. Good morning, Pastor Mark. Just talking about God being a God of freedom this morning. And this is the ongoing fight. And it's encouraging to me because it can be tiring oftentimes in this battle for freedom. And you're like, can people just not see? Can you just not see that you are a slave to the state? I don't think that we have fully felt what freedom looks like as a culture, as a society. Many of our fundamental rights that were supposed to be protected in the beginning have been eroded away. And it's my ambition to see us to do this, to maximize freedom in Oklahoma. I was speaking at an event just the other day, and we were talking about, I was talking about corporate welfare and the public-private partnerships and how I'm opposed to these. I'm not a fan of government funding private industry and luring large corporations in with big promises of tax credits and, basically paying them to come to Oklahoma. So you have this intermeshing, intertwining of the free market and government, and it gets really messy and gray. But as we were talking about that, a gentleman, an older, wise gentleman, he asked the legitimate question, how then will you attract businesses to Oklahoma? And for me, that answer is very simple. Freedom is attractive. It's what our soul longs for. It's where businesses thrive. Create a free environment, a true free market, and businesses will rush here. And better yet, I don't know if I should say better yet or just as good, local businesses will thrive. So maybe we won't be looking all over the globe to try to find businesses to come here. Our businesses that are already here will be able to thrive. That's the best scenario in my view. I mean, we get so fixated on how are we going to bring outside businesses in. Why don't we think about how to facilitate and undergird and support the businesses that are already here? The small businesses. Help them become the big businesses, the big corporations. Because I promise you, people who've devoted their life, invested their life into their business, want it to grow and want it to become something magnificent. And it's oftentimes the red tape and the regulation and the taxation and all of these burdens that will just keep a business from growing. I'm going to read you just a bit from this book. Like I said a minute ago, it's the American Covenant, and this is just a small little bit, but it's looking back at the Puritans. Back at 1630, it was the great exodus of the Puritans from England. And of course, they were under persecution by Charles I and gave them a strong impetus to leave England, to look for a land where they could worship God according to scriptures. And what were they doing? They were pursuing freedom. So you had the colonists, they arrived on New England coast in 1630. And these weren't necessarily the pilgrims at that point, but these were men of means. And here in the book, it says, some of them came from stately homes and were possessed of wealth and social position. It's according to historian John Brown, while others had occupied influential positions as ministers of the church. And so you had this, it wasn't just those that were seeking freedom from religious persecution. It was also those of wealth and social position that were looking for a place where they could thrive. And what were they looking for? They were looking for a land of freedom where they could do their business without government interference. So it says, but these men who in 1629 were preparing to establish a new colony in New England were unwilling to do so if the Massachusetts Bay Company remained merely a commercial trading body headquartered in London and subject to interference from the king. But how could they hope to set up a colony that would not be controlled by the home government? So again, looking for a place where they were not controlled by the government. In March 1629, a royal charter was granted to the company, creating a new corporation. The charter specified that a governor, deputy governor, and 18 assistants would be empowered to make all reasonable laws for the colony. But the question of where these officers would hold their meetings was simply not mentioned in the charter, and providentially, the autocratic King Charles did not notice this glaring omission and signed the charter. This was done the same week he dissolved Parliament and vowed to rule England alone. Thus, while annihilating representative government in England with one hand, with the other, he unwittingly created a self-governing colony in America. In July 1629, the Massachusetts Bay Company simply voted to transfer the government of the plantation from England to the new colony. Isn't it amazing? You just see God's hand all along the way, even in the hand of a tyrant like Charles I. God used him to make way for this new colony in America. And this allowed it to establish an independent, self-governing colony where, like the Pilgrim neighbors, they could worship the Lord according to the dictates of their conscience. Man. So in March 23rd, 1630, about 1,000 Puritans embarked for New England on 4 well-provisioned ships. And Arbella was one of those ships. And it says the great desire of the Puritan was to be self-governing in accord with God's laws, but the Puritan zeal and strength of character needed to be tempered with pilgrim compassion. This tempering process had already begun with Deacon Fuller's visit to Salem. Historian Edward Eggleston notes that the church discipline in the form of government in Massachusetts borrowed much from Plymouth, but the mildness and semi-toleration, the toleration of tolerable opinions, which Robinson had impressed on the Pilgrims, was not so easily communicated to their neighbors who had been trained in another school. But let me get to the point. The Puritans wanted a self-governing colony, but one in which political power remained in the hands of their fellow Puritans. I don't want to lose you by reading too much of this, but this is where I was at this morning reading through this, and just a great reminder of our roots and those that were coming to America, not only for religious freedom, but also to live in a land where they could govern themselves. And that is it. That is what people still pursue today. That is what true freedom looks like. Now, I do agree with John Adams that our Constitution was written only for a moral and religious people, that it's wholly inadequate to the governance of any other, that we must have self-governance before we can have true maximized freedom. Because if there is not a fear of God, you won't have self-governance. You'll have people that just live by the dictates of their flesh, their impulses, whatever they want, they'll pursue. And that means they'll run over or remove anyone in their way. And this creates a dangerous society, a society where people will kill, steal, and destroy to get what they want. But when you have a fear of God, you have self-regulation, you have compassion for your fellow man, you have fairness and honesty. And you're doing this not because there are laws, but because you are accountable to God. And this is what we need first in our society, is a return back to God. And then we must also have maximized freedom, where you trust these people with their own lives. And, we also must remember that it is never the government that gives freedom. The government does not give freedom. God gives freedom, and the government then can take it away through regulation and restriction and taxation. Just in this right here, let me just read just a bit more. It says, the arrival of the Arbella and her sister ships was followed by many more vessels from England, bringing new settlers. Soon Boston was established, and other settlements sprang up all over Massachusetts Bay. These towns followed Salem's lead in establishing their churches by covenant in emulation of their Pilgrim neighbors. But the Puritans continued to disavow separatism. They still considered themselves members of the Church of England, but now liberated from its corruptions. While they were united with regard to their church government, there soon was conflict concerning the colony's civil government. It had been intended originally that the freemen elect the governor, deputy governor, and the assistants, but as early as October 1630, an attempt was made to transfer power from the freemen to the governor, deputy governor, and assistants, and a proposal was made that the governor be elected not by the freemen, but by the assistants. When the government in Boston attempted to levy a special tax, here we go. When the government in Boston attempted to levy a special tax for frontier fortifications against a possible attack by the French, strong objections were raised by colonists in outlying settlements. They pointed out that according to English law, they could not be taxed except with their own consent. They insisted that the power to tax lay with the whole body of the people, that is, with the freemen of the colony. The Boston elite backed down, and all the freemen were allowed to elect the governor, deputy governor, and assistants. So this issue of taxation is critical to the idea of freedom. And when you have a governing body that will tax the people at will, there's always a righteous, quote unquote, righteous justification. In this instance, it was to improve fortifications to protect the people from attacks by the French. We're going to tax you for your own good, to build up fortifications to protect you. But the people said, no, we get to decide if we're going to be taxed. And this gets to the heart of the issue. The people, how much do you feel in control of taxation? Thankfully, just recently, in portions of Grady County, there was a vote. And it was a vote to increase property tax by 4 times. There was an attempt to increase property tax in an extreme way. And the justification, it was to build a Mid-America Votex Center. Now, I love Votex, all about them. But we have to look for another way to fund them other than property tax. And there was a critical vote. Guess what? The people showed up and voted it down. So the people said, no, we will not be taxed. So that was a beautiful example of the people being able to determine their own destiny and decide if they would be taxed or not. I agree, Pastor Mark. He said it's a shame that Oklahoma has a number of history teachers who do not like America and never teach them these important facts. Totally agree. And it's why we, even as adults, have to remind ourselves of them, because many of us were not taught. You know, I got like many of you, just a superficial tour across American history, but there was no digging into the heart of it and what was driving the Pilgrims and the Puritans and even those that were not religious that were coming to America. What was driving them to come here, and what did they set up originally as a pure form of government that protected freedom? Because these are the ideas we have to get back to, because we've slowly drifted away from them. It was always critical that the people were in charge of their own destiny. This is the nature of a representative republic, and that they could decide whether they would be taxed or not. So we, as the people of Oklahoma, everywhere I go, the majority are saying, we want to end property tax. If given an option, keep it or end it, the majority of people in Oklahoma would end property tax today, believing, as I do, that it's theft, that it's not right to own your property outright, yet pay rent to the government. And if you cannot pay the tax, they can take your property that you have paid off. Therefore, it's obvious that you do not actually own your property. That if you do not continue making the payments to the government will take it. And that is just wrong. It's not righteous. And so that secondary argument of, well, how are we going to fund this? Well, I don't know. Let's figure it out. There is an answer. There are many different avenues that we can look at to help fund schools. But we don't start with, okay, we're going to go rob the bank because we need money. I mean, how else am I going to feed my family? We've got to go steal something. No. Let's earn it honestly. And of course, the government does not earn anything. It does not create anything. It only takes. And so there must be a line on which it could take. And I believe taking one's property is not righteous. We have to start with what is right. Let's end the unrighteous theft called property tax. And then let's talk about how we can fund the things we need to fund. And if we need to scale back some things, let's scale it back. And people say, well, are you not for education? I'm all for education, but maybe we don't need a multi-million-dollar football stadium. Because it seems like this is the focus and the priority. We got magnificent sports programs while we have failing schools. And I know that's almost like heresy to even target or talk about sports. But let's remember what education is there for, what our public schools are there for. It's to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. But it's become so focused on sports programs. Seems like a massive amount of money is being sent that way. It's dominating our lives. We're addicted to entertainment and sports at the cost of our kids' education. So there's some fundamental things. Don't tell me that we can't fund education in the state of Oklahoma. We absolutely can, and we don't have to take people's property tax to fund it. I'm a firm believer in that. Let's start with what is righteous, and then provision will be there. This is at the heart of what they were talking about here in the founding of America, saying right from the very beginning, there was this move to bypass the people, for their own good, to tax them so they could fortify their cities against potential French attacks. And the people rose up and says, no. First of all, that points to how strong these people were and how independent they were. They weren't dependent on their government to protect themselves. Okay. I mean, we saw during COVID that the government was all about be safe. It's for your own good. We're going to, this is what you must do. We are going to institute mask mandates and vaccine mandates for your own good. We must protect you. But when you have a strong people with a strong faith, they say, back up, government, back up. We do not need that. We do not want that. Joyce says, at least the people are getting to vote on stadiums. We don't get to vote on drag queens in our schools. Well, at the same time, Joyce, I do believe we do get to vote on drag queens in schools. We get to vote on the school board members. So we have to do better on that front. And get up there and get involved. I mean, it is a problem. It is a major problem. But how many parents are voting for school board members? I think a very small percentage. But we need to get righteous school board members up there who are conservative, who are going to hold superintendents to account. And that would fix a lot of things. If we had a righteous conservative board in our schools, I think that they would not allow drag queens. And so that is a way that we get to vote on whether or not there are drag queens in our schools. We can look at what's happening in our schools and say, okay, but did you vote at the last school board meeting? There are some, when I look at the situation, it can appear ominous and it can appear complicated, but it's really not. It's really getting back to the fundamentals. And when you get back to a strong confidence in God, then it changes the way you see everything, changes the way you see your daily life, the motivation and drive to get up and go to work, the confidence you have to lead your family, the confidence you have to go and show up at a council meeting and be a voice. There is a feeling of inferiority and inadequacy when your average everyday person shows up to a city council meeting or a school board meeting. But I would encourage you, do not accept that. Do not put that on. Show up with confidence. You know what's right. You know what you need. You know what your family needs. And all we have to do is stand up and be a voice and demand it. And then to do it collectively. I mean, this is not about a bunch of individuals showing up. We need to get better at organizing community again. Doing it in your own home first, but connecting with your friends and neighbors, having them over to discuss these important things. Can you imagine? Can you imagine having people over like they used to do in the old days and discuss important events? But we just defer to, lighthearted discussions about the latest Netflix series or what we saw on social media. Even discussion about Fox News and what's happening on the news can just be similar to discussing Netflix. We're talking about something happening in the federal government that we have no control over. I mean, what happens with Trump and Putin and Zelensky? And I mean, we're going to watch it like a drama, but what control do we have over that? But why don't we talk about the things that we do have control over? Having people over in your home to discuss important issues that you can actually take action on. Now that's daring. That's daring, and that requires courage. And so, man, what if we did that again? Having people over to talk about how we can take real action for change in our community instead of the latest ball game. So when I think about the issues of our nation, when I think about the issues that we all complain about, I trace it back to its root. Okay, but let's look back to the root of it. I'm obsessed with stickers right now in my yard, and they're like taking over, but I am determined to get the stickers out of my yard. And what I can't do is go out and pluck all of the stickers. I have to dig each one of them up by the roots. And if I don't get the roots entirely, they will be back. And so we've got to go down to the root. We got to pull up those things that need to be pulled up. Jeremiah 1:10, God said, I appointed you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and overthrow. And so there are some things that have to be pulled up by its roots. And the root of so many of our problems, it finds its way right here in our own home. And in the end, there's no one to blame but ourselves for our own health, our own mental health, our own spiritual health, the health of our family, our own participation in society. These things, they're incumbent on us. And if we don't take action, the government will. And then we'll be left to sit back and watch and complain. I'm not content to do that anymore. I'm not content to do that anymore. This is why I'm running for governor. Because I'm saying I'm not going to sit back. I was doing a talk show on the radio. I was enjoying myself, having a great time. And I started to ask myself, if I see these issues happening, can I be content simply talking about it? Or must I do something? And that was the conclusion. It was time to act. And so I'm entering this race out of that strong conviction that I must take action. But again, back to that community aspect, I cannot do it alone. This is not about a bunch of individuals with their own agendas, their own personal individualized convictions, rushing in to take a city. I mean, we've got to get organized. So I'm asking you in this particular race that you would lock arms with me, that we would do this together. There's so many ways to do that. This was not like a whole big lead in for a donation. That's not what it is. But it really is about connecting, and how do we as a people get connected again? I am in this pursuit of radical, fundamental change in the state of Oklahoma. And the political elites will do everything to stop me. They'll do everything to stop me. I'm just waiting on the next, and I probably won't see it until next year. But I know it's coming. I know the attacks will come, the threats will come, the smears will come, the lies will come, the commercials, the mailers, all of these things, they're going to come to slander my name. It's just part of it. Rather than asserting, the things that they want to see change, they'll simply attack with ad hominem attacks on their opponent. And, I'm praying over myself and over my family. I'd ask that you do the same. But, we are in this to see radical, systemic, fundamental change in Oklahoma, and we need your help. This is not one man trying to take something. This is a movement. If the people don't move in this day, it will not happen. What I've decided, and I told my wife this the other day, I said, this is entirely up to the people. This is not on me. It's on me to do my part. But this is entirely on the people, for the people to decide who they will elect. And if they will do nothing, if they'll sit back and just roll the dice, well, then we'll get what we get. But if we take our destiny in our own hands, if we decide that we're going to take action and get behind someone, if I'm not the man, then I'm not the man. But I'm going to give everything for this cause that I'm talking about today. And if this is something you believe in too, we have to do it together. I've set up my campaign so that it will absolutely fail if the people do not step up. It is entirely dependent on the people. And so I ask you, if you want to be a part of this, that you lock arms with me, you give, you donate. We need the money. I'm going to Fairview tonight. Looking forward to that so much. And it's going to cost gas money to get there. People ask me all the time, how's the fundraising going? Well, it's trickling in. We're getting enough to get where we need to be next week. And that's a blessing. And I believe that will continue. But we also need to do things like buy road signs and t-shirts and things to promote around the state. It'd be nice to be able to buy billboards and some larger signs, some 4x8 signs, some things like that to get the name out. But, we'll do what the people in the end decide we can do. And so I ask you for your help to jump on, lock arms with me, link up, and let's move this thing forward. Again, going to Fairview tonight. So if you're in the area, come out. Love to connect with you. And going to be talking about. Let me just show you here what I'll be talking about. So these are the areas, the 5 points of emphasis that I'm bringing wherever I go, because this is the theme, is Oklahoma rising. We're calling the people to rise. And I want to see a rise in health, a rise in education, a rise in data security, property protection, and prosperity. So these are big general categories, and I break it down to individual issues. But for each of these, it comes back to self-governance, to personal responsibility, how we, the people, will take action first at the local level. And then, I could talk about each one of these, but then also holding our government accountable, not allowing them to come in and just take whatever data they want and monitor us however they want. No, we have to draw lines and say, you're not going to just be a nanny state looking over my shoulder over everything I do. You're not going to collect data on my children and track me for my own good. We're going to draw a line there. There are some real threats that in a digital world where everything we have is connected digitally, for all of our medical records, our bank records. I mean, your life essentially can come to a screeching halt if your data is not secure. So this is a big priority for me in Oklahoma. And, along with, of course, improving health. Let me just play this right here. I love this. This old Bobby leading the way again, leading by example.
And we had our big Pete and Bobby challenge today. 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups. You try to get under 5 minutes. How'd you do?
We got close. I was about 5:25. You were right behind me.
We had a couple of Marines here.
One beat 3 minutes, a couple beat 4 minutes. Pretty impressive.
It was President Trump who inspired us to do this. This is the beginning of our tour, challenging Americans to get back in shape, eat better, but also you need to get out and exercise. And we have a challenge. There's another cabinet member who we hope would show up today. We told him there was a cabinet meeting here. But anyway, we want to send out a challenge to Sean Duffy to come and do this.
So Secretary Duffy, you're invited to do the Pete and Bobby challenge. Can you do it in under 5 minutes? 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups. What do you think?
If you can beat 6 minutes, you can be part of this.
And yes, thank you, President Trump, for setting the example. Presidential physical fitness, make America healthy again. Fit, not fat. We're going to have a war-fighting force with young men and women who are prepared to defend the nation. We're doing it as a team. Join us. Appreciate you.
Love it. Love it. Pete's got to work on his pull-ups. They're pretty atrocious. But I love the emphasis on discipline, on health. Of course, like they said, led by President Trump with a presidential fitness test. But then, of course, Pete Hegseth bringing that into the military, making our military tough again. I love that. And I want to see that instituted in our schools and, across the state. I want to see our state get tough again. We have a tough people with strong conviction, healthy. And so I'm leading the way in that. I'm just looking at Mark saying, I think I know what my finisher workout will be on Wednesday. Exactly. Hey, we should all do that. A challenge. Should we do that, Mark? All right, let's do that. 50 push-ups. I think they said 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups. Okay, 100 push-ups, 50 pull-ups. Do some modifications if you need to modify. I'll do it with you, Mark. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, I did 50 pull-ups yesterday, but so yeah, and you got to film it. If you didn't film it, it didn't happen, right? So at least a clip for proof. So and I may even have to come on here and do it live with you guys, just because what I can do is I can show you some modifications. So don't miss Wednesday, tomorrow. It's gonna be good. I appreciate that, Mark. That's what we got to do, is challenge each other. So I challenge you on Wednesday. We're going to do some little fitness challenge. And here's what I'll do. I'll do this live tomorrow. Okay. I'll do this live tomorrow from the gym. And we'll go through this challenge. And I'll show you some modifications for those that can't do a full push-up. That's okay. I worked with 90-year-old ladies who couldn't do a push-up, and I've worked them their way to it, okay? So, of course, if you can't do a pull-up, that's a challenging feat if you've never done a pull-up, but I can help you with it, okay? I can show you some modifications and some different options, but yes, what if today is that spark? What if today is the day where things shifted and people started saying, you know what, I'm gonna do this. Actually, I got a call from a guy yesterday who called me up and said, I'd love for you to be my trainer. And I'm like, well, I'm not really training full-time right now, but he was on a mission to change his health. So he got a gym membership, and I encouraged him to get a trainer. But, people are starting to take the initiative, and that's what we must see. That's good. Thank you, Mark. We'll do that tomorrow. That'll be fun. Okay, a little change up. Now, I am going to, speaking of change up, I'm going to make a little shift in the morning. Okay, I'm going to move to doing these Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. These right here, the morning broadcast. I'm going to do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. There's just a lot on my plate right now, and I am not getting in some needed recordings for my podcast and other things. So I'm going to take Tuesday and Thursday to really commit to that and get those recordings done, because there's some more information we need to get out there and across the state. So I'm going to be committing Tuesday and Thursday mornings to recording on my podcast, to wrapping up a couple of these construction jobs I need to get wrapped up. And we'll be doing these broadcasts Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So don't miss those days, moving from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, so I can have some time for some other things. But Really appreciate you guys. And also we're going to be doing some lives at other times, probably in the evening. So there'll be some more opportunities to connect. But I do appreciate all you tuning in and sharing. If you would share this, this really helps break through that algorithm. And we've noticed in the last few weeks, we've gone from, hundreds of viewers to, less than 100 viewing. Now it does get circulated and eventually gets out there, but help me get this out there. So I should have said this from the beginning. So if you would just share this broadcast, tag a few people in it to get this out, and I'll do my best to bring the best quality so that it's something worthy of sharing. But tomorrow, that'll be worthy of sharing. All of you guys watching, join us tomorrow, 7 a.m. I'm going to come to you from the gym, and we're going to do this challenge. Okay, Bobby and Pete, they threw down the challenge. President Trump leading the way. I'm not going to ask President Trump to do a pull-up. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but at least he's encouraging people to get healthy again with the presidential challenge. So 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, and we may throw some others in there too, but that'll be good. All right, I gotta hop off here. Appreciate all y'all tuning in. Be sure to share this. And also go to JakeMerrickForGovernor.com. We made some changes on the website. So the calendar is live now, so you can see all of the dates and where I'm going to be. So go check that out. You can request me to come as well. So if you see an open slot, you can put in a request and be happy to try to get out there to you. Those are coming in every day, so the calendar is filling up. So if you want to try to connect, I would encourage you to do that soon. But going to be in Fairview tonight. Really looking forward to Fairview, guys. Robbie, I see you. I will see you there. So glad I'm going to see you. All right, guys. God bless. We'll see you later.